Welcome back to Performance Talk. My name is Yul Gordon. As you all know, right now, my partner Chris Costa is taking a slight leave of absence, but he'll be back with us soon, and we'll welcome him back. Today, our guest is Jeff Patterson. Jeff, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Everything is great, man. I have no complaints. It's not raining here, even though here in Texas we've had a bunch of storms, so that's a nice reprieve from a little bit of sunshine and so forth. You're up in the Northwest, right?
Yeah, Portland, Oregon, and it's been beautiful here the last couple of days, which is not normal for May.
Yeah, I have a little bit of experience with that area of the country, but I don't know. I was up there a few years ago, and it seemed like it rained for 2 weeks straight. I said, why did I pick this time to come? But not being from there, yeah, I wasn't used to the weather, so I wasn't prepared, if you know what I mean.
For sure. Yeah, we get a lot of rain, but it's beautiful here. There's a lot of green, a lot of mountains, rivers.
Oh yeah, I love the country. I like to say I'm an outdoors guy, but compared to real outdoorsmen, I'm a novice. But I like to be outside anyway. So tell us a little bit about what you do, Jeff, and how you got to where you are.
Well, I run a martial arts academy here in Portland, Oregon. I've been doing that now since 1994, so going on 30 years.
All right.
And I've been practicing the martial arts for about 36 years. I went to college back in the early 90s. I got out of school in 1994. As soon as I graduated college, I started up the academy with a business partner of mine. And it just kind of took off after a lot of hard work, and just ended up staying with it. I was the first kid in my whole extended family to make it through college. And I got 2 degrees, and my whole family was thinking, he's going to go out and get a big job doing something important. And then I ended up opening up a martial arts academy. And for the first few years, everybody was saying, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to do something?
Yeah, when are you going to ditch that stuff you're doing and do something real? Yeah, I got you.
They didn't realize it could have turned into something as good as it did.
Well, that's outstanding. So how'd you get into the martial arts? Sounds like it was pretty early in life, but let our audience know kind of how you matriculated towards that, and how performance overall has influenced that.
Yeah, sure. So I started out in martial arts at a fairly young age. However, when I got into college, I met a coach or instructor. He was focused on Western boxing.
Okay.
And he also dabbled in some other things as well. And at the time, I was a pretty narrow focused. I was doing kickboxing and Western boxing. Okay. And he opened up my eyes to the whole world of the combat sports and everything else that was going along with it. And from that point, I just found a passion for it and started running with it. He's the one that also kind of got me into the meditative arts, which was a bit of a side twist. Maybe we can touch on later.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That was my first introduction.
Okay. The from the onset, and now we know about your family thinking, well, this is just a hobby. But from the onset, as far as, your body and taking this more seriously than most people do, and it's not just to, just for something to do or something you thought was interesting. Why did you think it was something that could be a part of your life?
Going back to that same coach, he told me a long time ago, and he was one of those coaches that has a huge influence on you and kind of is a turning point in your life. Every time he told me something, I was so fortunate to get to train with him. I looked at it like it was gold, and I have a lot of value in that. And I remember him telling me something as a young guy and saying that, you want to create a life, not make a living. And at the time, I was really getting into the martial arts and becoming passionate about it. And I was much more interested in creating the opportunity of doing martial arts for the rest of my life. And even if it had the chance of not making any money at all, rather than doing a job that I wasn't happy with and just kind of grinding it out.
Well, and in all of the world of performance, from strength coaches to runners to athletes in the combat sports to football players, everybody at some point, if you don't love it, if you don't feel like there's a passion for it, I think, and this is strictly my opinion, I think you're wasting your time because you're when it comes to your body, either we have two choices, either we abuse it or we take care of it. So, with that thought in mind, what are some of the things you did in the martial arts, other than martial arts, to kind of take care of your body? Did you watch what you ate? We're going to talk about the meditative part. So you actually did get into the psychological side of it and everything. But what are some of the other things? Did you go in the weight room? Were there other types of exercises you did, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, it's been a lifestyle, and it involves, weight training. I used to go to the gym when I was younger, 5-6 days a week, lifting weights. I was doing my cardio conditioning, all the things that you do, running, doing sprints, doing
Right.
stairs, doing speed drills, all of that kind of stuff. For boxing, it's a pretty competitive sport, as you know, and you've
Right.
got to think holistically. It's got to be everything. It's got to be the diet, it's got to be the exercise, and then it's got to be the technical and strategic part of it as well. So it's a very demanding sport, and if you're not willing to really dive in, there's no sense in doing it, because you can't hang, you can't compete.
The idea of sacrificing at a young age. I'm keeping you back in your younger years here for a second. It seems like you had a great coach, by the way, because he kept you motivated. But there's always times when we're like, man, I need a break. I need to take a break. How do you keep yourself? And before you got to that what I call the grown up state of performance, where you're taking care of your body and helping others take care of their bodies. Before you got to that, how did you keep yourself, or how did you correct, when you got to that point where it was like, I don't want to do it? Did you just stop and then come back? How long of a break was it? Et cetera, et cetera. I say that a lot.
I guess back in the early days, there might have been some times with some very short breaks here and there, but at a fairly young age, I met this coach, and after I met him, it pretty much became a way of life for me at that point. And
Okay.
I've spent at least the last 32 years living the lifestyle.
Yeah, you're one of the fortunate ones that got a hold of a coach or mentor that not just set you on the path and gave you a push, but also helped direct and guide you through some of that stuff. It sounds like it. Would I be correct in that assumption?
For sure. And one of the things that I think, if I was to say a key turning point, was having him recommend a meditative practice. When he did that, it changed my whole outlook in so many ways. And that's one of the things that I think kept me on that path.
Okay, so let's jump right into the meditative part, since you segued us into that. That meditation is so critical for many athletes. From regulating stress to preparing for performance to there's all points of performance that athletes can use meditation. And I don't know that we take advantage of it in the strength conditioning world like we could. I won't say should, but like we could. But touch on some of those points for us, and how you believe, how you got into. Well, you told us how you got into the meditative arts, but how you progress them with yourself, and then how you start helping others.
Yeah, sure. So Originally, like I said, I was doing Western boxing, and I used to go to a gym just down the street here called Grand Avenue Boxing Gym. And it was back in the late 80s and early 90s, pretty much the
Right.
only boxing gym in Portland. And this coach was there. He had his own stable of fighters and really didn't have time for anybody new. I'd always looked up to him, and he'd created a lot of really well-known fighters, and I would always try to get his attention, and show up to the gym when I
Right.
knew he was going to be there, and kind of followed him around for a few months. And finally, he started kind of paying a little bit of attention to me and spending a little bit of time with me. And, after a very short time, it was probably 2 or 3 weeks, he told me something that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. And at the time, I'm
Okay.
this young kid, and isn't that like for old people in the park?
Right. Right.
How's that going to help me?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I had so much respect for him, though, that I took on the practice and I started doing it. And at the time, like I mentioned, everything he gave me, I treated like it was gold. Well, he started showing me the first couple movements of a Tai Chi form that you could show somebody in one session. I did that every day for an hour and a half. He told me that I should do an hour a day, but I always tried to impress him. So I was doing an hour and a half a day, and I did it religiously. And after 3-4 months go by, he hadn't shown me anything else. And here I am every day grinding out these few movements over and over and over again,
Right.
down in my basement, doing this meditative practice. And I remember thinking, man, is this guy ever going to show me anything new? What am I doing this for? I just couldn't figure it out. And I'm sure he saw the discouragement in me when I would come into the gym. And I just did it every day, though, because I knew that if he asked me, hey, did you do your meditative practice today? The last thing I wanted to do was disappoint him and say, no, I didn't even
Right.
want to get into that conversation.
Right.
So then something happened at about, the 6 or 7 month mark, which was really kind of a pivotal change in my career, in that I went down in my basement to practice. I get down in the morning, I looked up at the clock, and an hour and a half had gone by, and it felt like 15 minutes. And it just something a little bit almost magical about it. And I was like, what
Right.
just happened? How was that? And from that point on, I started diving in. I'm like, there's something special about this stuff. What can I do to really get into it?
Right.
And from then I was doing it all the time. And I'm sure he noticed that change in me energetically, because in a few weeks after that change, he showed me the rest of the form in a couple weeks, which normally takes most people about a year to learn. But the idea was, as I was learning these core fundamental principles and these root ideas of the practice, which is the hardest thing to teach people. It's really easy to show them a bunch of movements if they've got a good memory. But in
Right.
order to get the root fundamentals, of any athletic practice, it doesn't matter if you're playing
Yeah.
basketball or football or whatever. It's
Foundation.
those foundations, exactly. And so once he saw that in me, he really started pushing me.
Okay. That's I do that a lot with athletes I work with we call our foundational exercises push-ups, sit-ups, dips, and pull-ups. And that's something you can do every day. And I said, I tell them, if you do these every day, and you do, let's just say 25 every day to start off with, you'll find yourself doing 100 every day before you realize it, and your body's stronger, and all that stuff is built. And now we can start strength training, and they look at me, and those that have done it, male and female, every sport, they've said, wow, I didn't really think those were going to help, but, I go back to those even when I'm not near a weight room or whatever. That's what they do. So that type of coaching and taking to, well, in the first place, man, I'm going to commend you on your, even back then, on your perseverance. Consistency and persistency are the two things it takes to be able to do anything. And it sounds like you had those at an early age, and this coach helped you realize or helped you find it, put it that way. So let's talk about how you, and I'm sure it's a lot of what he did with you, but how did you take those things when you started working with athletes and fighters? And I call them all athletes, man, because you know. But when you started working with them, how did you take the things that he taught you and put those into practice?
Well, so as a coach, you know, there's always, you know, the technical side of things that we're working, whether they're competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, or Western boxing, or whatever it is, and that's very important. There's the conditioning element, the mental side of the training. And when we get into the mental side of the training, that's where we start looking into the meditative arts. And that's something that I've always tried to ingrain, even if it's at a just a basic level for a competitor, because a lot of times not every competitor wants to take on that practice, but they can still be a good competitor, right? And so I've always tried to integrate as much as you can. And so with that, I try to get them to commit to at least a 20-minute a day ritual of some kind of meditative practice. And that meditative practice could be a form of sitting meditation, breath work, standing meditation, a movement meditation, something to just come back to your center, you know. And one of the things, whether it's in athletics or anything we do in life, is that we go through life all the time with covering up things, you know. We're a lot of times I tell people to think of it as, you know, you're wearing a mask. You know, you'll go out in public and you don't want people to see how you feel about a certain thing, or you try to keep something reserved or hidden. And anytime we're doing this and we're wearing these masks, it kind of takes us away from who we really are. And a lot of people, they wear these masks so often that eventually they're wearing the mask when they look at themselves in the mirror. And so this ritual practice helps us learn how to get rid of that mask and really feel who we are internally and kind of touch base to the root of what we are and what is important to us. And so this is one of the benefits you get from doing this. Then, so once they can integrate that ritual time, which again is very short, you know, anybody's got 20 minutes a day that they can invest into something like this, you know. And I always remember the Dalai Lama one time saying that everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour. And I
That's
I love that saying.
One of the things that I got into early from the psychological side was visualization. But later on, and by no means am I even, I can't even say I'm skilled at meditation for myself, but I can say I have advised athletes to say, okay, why don't you, you're not focused, you're tense, you got a lot of stuff going on. Why don't you try to meditate? But I never could, what's the word I'm looking for? I never could help them integrate the practice. I don't know enough about it I'm still a novice at it myself. So put it that way. But visualization is something different. And that's what I had to come to grips with. Kind of, if you can, you know, touch a little further on the difference between visualizing something and then just, you know, meditating overall.
Sure. So when I talk about the meditative arts, it involves more of a lifestyle rather than any one specific practice. So within the meditative arts, there's different directions that you can take the practice. There's like the athletic or martial side, the therapeutic side, the medical side, the philosophical side, and then also the spiritual or the meditative side. And so when you're talking about visualization or you're talking about meditation, there's specific kinds of meditation, whether you're doing a sitting practice, a standing practice, a movement meditation. There's mental trainings that we do through visualization and through different sayings or gratitude practices that help us. But the meditative practice itself is meant to be something where we take all of these tools from this lifestyle and we integrate it into what we are doing. And we do that with the ritual practices, the active practices, which are things that you can do all day, every day. You can do when you're standing in line at the grocery store, you're stopped in your car at a red light, you're walking down the street. And the more that we can incorporate these things into our day and bring that focus back to center, now, it's kind of like, and this is important for anybody new out there who's thinking about taking on a meditative practice. Through the years, I've had thousands of students coming through the academy. And one of the most common things I hear people say is that they've tried meditation, but it just didn't work for them. They weren't able to quiet their mind. Right. Meditation is not about quieting your mind. Think about it this way. If you sit down for 20 minutes a day and you do a sitting meditation and work on your breath work, everybody, and I don't care how experienced of a meditator you are, you will get distracted and your thoughts will wander. But here's the idea is, say you sit down for 20 minutes and meditate and you get distracted 100 times. Well, every time you get distracted, if you take your focus and you come back to your posture and back to your breath, and you come out of that distraction and bring it back to center, that's one repetition. Then you get distracted again, you come back to center, there's 2. If you do that 100 times in 20 minutes, it's kind of like doing 100 pull-ups. You're getting stronger, right? So now you do that every day, and now your mind is getting strong. You're building up that power and that ability to take that stressor or that distraction and come back to that focus and that power, and you can do anything with that. And that's why, the meditative arts are so powerful, and that you can use it in any area of your life, athletics, of course, being one of those.
Right. You know what? You brought up a couple of points there that a lot of people don't they don't grasp. Now, when I first started looking into the meditative arts, I thought, okay, I understood, just like I understood what you were saying right now from a intellectual point or an academic point. From those perspectives, I understand what meditation is supposed to accomplish or what we want to accomplish. That practice, you just explained to me something I didn't know or didn't realize, is that it's the repetition of coming back to center that makes you stronger. It's not getting frustrated because you can't stay centered.
Exactly.
Okay. So, and I think that's the key point for our listeners to take away from this is, to take away from that little segment is that, and I talk to athletes all the time, but hey, bring it back to center. When you get distracted, bring it back to center. It's just like when you're in the weight room or when you're on the field. Hey, you messed that rep up. Let's correct it. That rep was not your best one. Let's do that one again. The thing though with meditation is the more you practice, correct me if I'm wrong, the more efficient you get, almost from a what do I want to say? But, physically, you make the adjustments. Meditatively, psychologically, or I'll say meditatively, you let the distraction happen and then you do it again. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And, meditation helps us become unshakable, if you will. It helps us when a distraction or something happens in our life. It gives us the tools with our posture, our breath, our mental training exercises that we're doing to come back to that center. And everybody gets distracted. I don't care who you are, right, how long you've been meditating. Right. That's the way of life, right? But having these tools to help find that balance is very important. And then here's another important point as well, is part of this practice helps us fine-tune our awareness and be more sensitive to when these distractions happen. So, for example, we all go through the day with emotional ups and downs. If you wait until you're totally distracted or upset, it's really hard to calm down. But if you notice that distraction as soon as it starts starting to unsettle you, it's easy to use these tools and the breath and some of your mental training exercises to bring that unsettled feeling down before it gains too much momentum. And having that ability to sense and be aware of that at the start of the distraction is much more powerful, because now it's a lot easier to control.
Okay. Now, so just so our listeners know, we can sit here and we can go 5 different directions with the conversations, but so our listeners who are professionals that work with athletes as well as athletes, how do we take that and apply that to sport or to athletics, to training, and understanding that a lot of times performance is affected by what happens away from the gym, away from the competition, away from our normal preparation and our daily routine. So how do we take that and insert that? Because a lot of guys, and I won't say guys, I'll say athletes. A lot of athletes, after they're done with whatever training they have for that day, because it may not be as complete of a lifestyle for them as it is for us, how do they take that and go, okay, I need to bring this back over here in the athletic world, in the sport world? You know what I'm saying? Okay, let me give it to you like this. We're in the 3rd round of a kickboxing match. I just been getting my butt kicked for 2 rounds. I got to recenter some kind of way. Can the meditative arts away from that competition help me do that in that 3rd round?
100%.
Okay.
And I'll give you a couple examples. So one, first I don't know if you knew this, but I'm sure, of course, you know who Phil Jackson is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when he was training the Chicago Bulls and they were winning all of their competitions, and also when he was training down in California, he used to have his athletes doing meditation and Tai Chi because he knew it helped their performance. Here you got the best athletes on the planet and one of the best coaches arguably out there telling their athletes to do that. So that's a little bit of validation that, there might be something good, right? Well, I'm a firm believer in that. As a coach, if you've got a fairly disciplined athlete, it's easy to get them to 85% of their potential.
Right.
I think in order to get from 85 to 90 to 95 to 97, now you're talking about the guys that are magical, almost, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, these guys that are just amazing at the craft. Well, in order to get somebody to that level, you have to have that mental side of the training. And the meditative arts, while some people have strong minds already, even though they may have that, the meditative arts can help you get there even deeper. And with a lot of things, I feel like that training can help us improve that power and improve that focus. And, for an athlete like Michael Jordan, he's already at 95, 96% of his potential in his prime. You might only improve that by 1%, but 1% for somebody like that is amazing, right? So that's how it can help you, by improving that through repetition, through building that mental power of focus and direction, and not getting distracted when you're getting beat down in that 3rd round and feeling like things are, your mind starts playing tricks with you. Oh, I missed that shot, or I did this, and you start getting distracted. But you start having those reps of coming back to focus and believing in yourself and knowing that you can. This is very powerful.
These types of, I like it when we get guests on like yourself we go just beyond regular performance to those areas that, we always think of performance as doing all the things that help you on the court. But what about those things that help you in preparation? When you don't want to be there that day, when you you might have been injured and you're a little bit, you have a little bit of anxiety about coming back. You know, hey, you and the honey just had an argument before you left the house to go to practice or to go to training. And the truth be told, none of us want to leave like that and then go train. That's not the thing we want to do. But this type of meditative practice, I see the usefulness in preparation, and I think, and I'm thinking out loud here, so stop me if I say something that's not right. But I think that there's probably, and you might do this already with your athletes, or you might have done it yourself. But I think there's a timing somewhere in the programming of their training for that. Now, I think you just mentioned Phil Jackson did some of that, but I think in regular preparation, maybe the first 10 minutes is times you do that. Then you get into your warm up, and because we're allowing now, 15 minutes for folks to warm up, is a pretty standard time. And then go on and start your training. So from that perspective, give us a little bit of insight, if there's any, on how we do that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point, because if somebody doesn't understand this, it's easy to get off track. So the meditative arts is meant to be an internal focus. And while you could learn specific practices going to a group or taking a course of some sort, the practice is meant to be at a time when you're alone, you're on your own, you're not looking at a screen, you're not listening to an audio, where you can let go of the mask, where you can come inside and really listen to all of the little subtle things that are going on in your mind and in your body. And so that's why I was saying having that 20-minute a day ritual, it doesn't need to be in the actual practice with your team.
Okay.
But if you're doing that ritual on your own every morning, for me, I have my ritual every morning. I get up, I brush my teeth, I make a cup of tea, I do my meditation ritual. And if you just have that as kind of a way to start your day, that I feel is going to give you the best results. And then along with that, you can integrate what I call reset practices, where every hour your phone goes off, or every 90 minutes your phone goes off, and you do 10 breaths. You just turn inside and you count 10 breaths, or you do some energetic circulations, or you do some mental training that helps bring you back to that focus. Those little things where you're integrating those into your life and starting to live the lifestyle of the meditative arts, that's where you're going to see the most benefits from it.
Okay. My big thing in the mornings is, you get up, you brush your teeth. I go out to my garden, and mine is kind of a sit still thing. I'm a big, and have been for years and years. I like to grow vegetables and flowers. Most people that know me didn't know that, prior to me, prior to the internet. Nobody would ever thought, hey, Musclehead, the little short guy over there is planting flowers. But leave me alone while I plant my flowers, because I'm doing something, it's not just planting flowers, or when I'm out there planting vegetables, I'm not, that's where I do that. And that's why when I first started getting into meditation without knowing what it was. And now there's a little bit more purpose to it. And I'm sure after this, there'll be some more intention to it, if you know what I'm saying. So not just, 3 or 4 times a week, but every day, something like that. So, all right, man, that's some pretty interesting stuff as we, that we're talking about. So talk to me about, how you got into, you said you opened up your own gym, but a lot of us, we open up a gym, or we open up a dojo, or we open up a place where we're going to practice what we like. And we get so into the business that we're not doing so much of the practice. So tell me how you got into and keep separate the business from the practice.
I've always done this business because it supported my practice, and I've always had my practice be first. So I've spent my whole career traveling around the world, finding teachers that are the best in the industry, that, you know, of the different practices that I do here, and just seeking out being a student, you know. And even after 30 years of being a practitioner in these arts, I'm still just a student. I'm not even close to being the master, and I don't know if I ever will be, you know, and that's not my goal. I just love to learn, you know. And one of the things that you would think to the average person, that meditation's simple, right? You sit and you breathe. But I tell you, I've been studying for over 30 years and I'm learning new stuff all the time. And this is my profession and I spend thousands and thousands of hours in it. It's a very deep practice and there's a lot of directions you can take it. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but in Qigong, which is one of the meditative arts coming from China, all of the old Chinese doctors in Chinese medicine all used to be Qigong practitioners. So Chinese medicine comes from the Qigong philosophy. And so that's just a whole lifetime worth of knowledge right there, just studying that one branch of the meditative practice.
See, and yeah, man, talk to us about, you know, you said a mouthful right there, but there's a one branch. The way you said that, you know, implies to me that, and I'm sure our listeners, that there are hundreds of branches. Is that a true statement?
There's 5 directions of the meditative arts. And I think one that I would like to touch on for your listeners would be the philosophical side, because the idea of yielding, which is a very powerful concept. And, you know, you mentioned earlier my book, The Yielding Warrior.
Right.
That whole book is designed off of one concept. And the idea of yielding is there's 3 different kinds of yielding. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the easiest one to understand. And it's the idea of I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage is going to push the other person over.
Right.
But instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force.
Right.
And now I can respond with less effort and not have to try to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. Now, this is very important for any kind of contact athletic sport, football, basketball, anything where you're tying up with somebody else in martial arts. When you can learn how to lead somebody into an area where they're not as strong and attack them where they're out of balance or they're off center.
Yes.
It's very powerful. And so in order to be good at yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. One is you need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed. The breath has to be calm. The mind has to be present. And we have to be very aware of what's going on so we can make these subtle transitions and lead that energetic exchange rather than react to it. Because if we're reacting to it, we're already behind. We want to be able to be sensitive enough to guide it where we want to go. Now, this is obvious how this is beneficial in martial arts. If I'm walking down the street and I come up against some guy who's 250 pounds and can pick up a Volkswagen Bug, I don't want to try to wrestle that guy to
right.
And so I want to learn how to yield to his force and maybe get behind him and choke him out if I'm going to survive that encounter. Well, this is where it becomes very interesting, because once we start learning how to see those things internally and become more in tune with what's going on inside of ourselves, we also start seeing things more clearly in other people. Now we're going to move into what I call mental yielding. Say, for example, I say something that unsettles you and I pick up on it when it's very small. It's a lot easier to adjust the conversation and keep us in a harmonious place than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head.
Right.
And so learning learning how to use yielding in all of your interactions is very powerful. One, you're being more considerate, so people like being around you more. But two, you can lead conversations, you can lead negotiations, you can lead different
Right.
things, whether it's that business or whatever it is you're doing, to a positive direction for both people rather than finding conflict. And this one thing right here is extremely powerful, learning how to use this skill. Then we also have what I call emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding. And this comes back to athletics as well. And
Mm-hmm.
emotional yielding is how we deal with our own interpersonal conflicts. So a lot of times something will happen to us. Say we miss that shot. And then we think, oh, I missed that shot. I put my foot here. I should have done that. I should have done this when he went that way. I should have. Now you spent 10 seconds going down this road thinking about all the things you should have done, and the other team already scored a point on the other end of the court. And
Yeah,
so,
that's 3 plays in basketball. Yeah.
exactly. And
That you've been
so
disconnected. Yeah.
this idea of having that awareness and that sensitivity of seeing that distraction when it first happens and realize, don't go this path, let's go this direction, can give us so much more benefit. And when I've been explaining this idea of yielding for many, many years, and one of the most common things I hear people say is that, oh, it makes a lot of sense. I do that all the time. And I agree. I think everybody does this to some degree all the time. But it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, he would see things about that crime scene in the series of events and the timeline that we would have no clue of because he's an
Right.
expert in the field. If you want to be an expert in this field, I don't think there's a way to do it without a meditative practice. There is just so much depth in becoming in tune with yourself and seeing that in other people that you can't get to that 95, 96, 97% of your ability without having a meditative practice.
I just as you were speaking there, just to put a little point on that for a lot of our listeners, and I'm working with a young linebacker and 2 young receivers right now, and the physical yielding is something that they're not taught. That and I know that because I'm when I look at it from a movement perspective, I'm trying to get them to be able to change direction and do things like that. And a lot of times it's against force with somebody in front of them or trying to impede their travel and how to maneuver around that. You just explained physical yielding in a way for me to take that as a practitioner to a young wide receiver and teach them how to move appropriately based on what the other guy's doing. Now I've heard, and I don't know if they did it on purpose or how much they're into meditation, but I've heard Deion Sanders talk about something similar that popped in my mind as well. And he was like, hey, if the guy comes up and he's positioned himself this way, don't try to run through him. Don't try to hold him up here. Do X. Or if he comes up this way, then do X. And what he was explaining, I think in some ways was really akin to what you were explaining is don't stand up there and try to go head to head with whatever they're doing, especially if you've already took a emotional stock and what was the other yielding? Physical, emotional, and
Mental.
Okay, so of course there's a lot of jawing going on. So if you're mentally stable, but once you've already taken stock of the other two, you got to take stock of the physical. What is his positioning? What is his intent? What are they trying to do? Yeah, you connected that to meditation, and you connected that in a way that made sense to me, and I hope it made sense to our listeners. Hopefully, I added a little bit that clarified for anybody that could have been or might have been stuck. But that is That is some great insight, and I like the information there. Physical, mental, and I'm always going to forget the third one.
Emotional.
Emotional. It doesn't matter which
Yeah.
third one I forget. It's three. So I can only remember two things at a time. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, emotional, mental, and physical yielding. Yeah, that's I'm gonna have to give that some more thought. It's a great way to look at that.
Yeah, and so you touched on something really important there, and you talked about intent. And understanding the intent is very valuable in that, like you said, if somebody's positioned some way and you see what his intent is strategically, and if you're a technical person, you can understand where he's wanting to go and what he's wanting to do, and what are your best options when somebody gives you that kind of preparation or that kind of intent, right? I think it can go a little bit one step deeper as well, is by cultivating a meditative practice. It helps deepen your sensitivity. So after the intent, if there is contact and you feel that change happening in the actual moment when the play is happening, you can respond because you can see it before it gains too much momentum. And so having that strength to stay in center and not get too focused on your play that you're going to do because you see this intent makes you more pliable and flexible and able to respond more in the moment.
See, that type of again, for my audience, and maybe a little bit of clarification. I might be confusing them. You never know. But just that type of anticipation, we see it in some athletes, but we don't know. I don't know anyway if it's accidental or on purpose. They may have guessed right, or was it that they anticipated correctly? Or what's the word? I don't really even know, but I know we see some reactions and we just go, wow, how did they even do that? Or did they know they did it? Was it on purpose? We like to think with those guys that are at 95% all the time, we like to think that they're doing everything on purpose, but are they? So go ahead.
I believe that a lot of it they are. Now, of course, there's always some things that come up that could be a little bit of luck. But I do believe that you can train your awareness and your sensitivity to where you're doing those things a lot more often than somebody who's not.
Okay. So there's another great point to where, there's a tick mark on the pros side for meditation, and I don't have any on the con side yet. So, if we're not at least suggesting some type of meditation for our athletes who are at that point. Not everybody's ready. And I'm sure you've seen that before. You've seen athletes who are just simply not ready to step into that next level or of preparation. So how do you get them to meditate?
Well, I think that's one of the good things about meditation is it doesn't need to be one of those things where you retire to a cave and sit for 10 hours a day. You can integrate a lot of these simple practices into your day and get a lot of benefit out of it. And once you start seeing through, and remember, it's consistency. If you've got to do this daily, and it's got to be a regular daily ritual and a way of life for you. But even if it was just doing the 20 minutes a day and integrating a couple 2 and 3 minute active practices throughout your day, you do that for a year and you're never going to stop, because you're going to see so many benefits and realize why you're doing that it'll be with you for the rest of your life.
Let's dig it. Let's extrapolate a little bit more out of active practice. So we know that, well, I'll let you talk about it and tell our listeners about, the steps to active practice. You talked about it a little bit earlier, but expand that a little bit.
Sure. So an active practice is where throughout the day, and again, for newer students that come in here, I always tell them to set an alarm on their phone to go off every 60 or 90 minutes or whatever they want to commit to. And you could start with something as simple as when that alarm goes off, you shut it off. If you're around other people, go out to a different room for 2 minutes and just count out 10 deep, full breaths. Bring your self back to center. Remember, we're trying to build that power and that awareness to have that strength to let go of our masks, bring our awareness back to that center line, and try to have the power to do that all of the time. And if you're integrating some of these active practices that can be done when, like I said, you're walking down the street or even standing in line at the grocery store, pretty soon you start spending a lot more time, whether you realize it or not, letting your guard down, coming back to center, being more in tune with what's real to you, and finding the power in your mind to let those distractions go. And now it's starting to become a way of life. And these are the easiest things to do. Everybody's got moments in the day where they can take 2 minutes and work with an energetic rotation or a movement posture or a breathing exercise.
That's outstanding. And just to so we keep it on track with athletes. Hey, turn it off, man. Especially in the aggressive sports, the physically aggressive sports like the combat sports, hockey, baseball, hockey, football. Basketball is a physical sport. Sports like that where aggression is part of your day. But when you walk out of the gym or you walk off the field, you can't take that same type of aggressiveness with you. So, coming back to center is really important. Letting some of that go where it may help you in your sport. I could see the use of meditation or the active practice and meditation, to recenter after, okay, practice is over, 2 minutes by my locker here before I go out the door because I'm going home to the wife and kids now, or, I'm going to sit with granny for a while or whatever. You can't be that same person, or you can't carry that same aggression to those things. And it probably helped with some of the road rage and the grocery store shenanigans too.
For sure. I firmly believe that if everybody meditated a little bit, the world would be a better place for sure.
I'm with you 100% on that. Because let's face it, just in general in the world, we need to take a couple deep breaths. I mean, just in general, that's not what we talk about here, but, I've been around long enough and lived long enough nowadays to kind of say things that others might not say, but the world just needs to take a step back and take 10 deep breaths and think about it and then see what comes out of it. We're too busy reacting to everything. But anyway, let's, we are, getting close to the end of time. So I want to know what's next for you, man. Tell our audience, tell our listeners what's next for you, what you got coming up, what you got out there, and how they can find you, if they wanted to.
Yes. So if you go to theyieldingwarrior.com, you can get access to all of my online trainings. If you're in Portland, Oregon, you can come in here to the Academy. If you'd like to get a free copy of my book, The Yielding Warrior, you could go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book and just pay for shipping and handling, and we'll send you out a copy of the book. Really has a lot of good tools in there explaining the philosophy of yielding, but also giving you some techniques and strategies that you can incorporate. And it ties in really well with the online program if you're wanting to get deeper from there.
Okay. Well, listen, man, this has been truly enlightening for me. I'm glad we, got a chance to have you on. In the future, would definitely like to have you come back on and sit down, and you might even get a call from me to sit on a panel with some other professionals as we do our little series that we do in training, just but I would fill you in on all of that. But just it's refreshing a lot of times to go just beyond what people think of as normal performance preparation. You know what I mean? And, you know, we know about, we talk about rehab. We didn't even get into what rehab, you know, meditation could do for recovery and rehab, but we'll save that for another show or short or something. But, those, you know, when we step to the boundaries and push a little bit in the performance world, we learn a lot that we can take back with us and use. And I'm sure that, your book and your programs would help a lot. I hope a lot of people hear this and you know, come to the link and join your online program so that, you know, they can get some benefits of your 30 years of extreme knowledge. So I appreciate having you on. I appreciate you taking the time early in the morning out there to sit with us and impart some knowledge. Got to come back and see us, Jeff.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.